Hello, today we are looking at the assembly instructions for the beanbag owl pattern that is up on my blog, homemadeby.giggles.blogspot.ca, and also is up for linking in Ravelry as well. So those are the pieces that are available in the pattern to make, and this video will cover the assembly of that pattern. Again, this is the beanbag owl, and the assembly I think is very important. It can kind of make your critter look exactly how you want, or sometimes it's where your critter goes wrong, even if you've done all the crocheting properly. So I figured it would help to make this video so people can see exactly how I assemble my owl, and then you can see the finished product. So to start is stuffing the body. And with the body, you can either stuff it with stuffing if you'd like, or batting. Some people use actual beans. I prefer to use poly pellets. These are my poly pellets here. They're very small beads. So I like to make sure that they're wrapped up in a little pouch. To make this pouch, I simply put some spare fabric in a good color. Here I chose gray because the gray is dark and similar to the purple. Something that won't matter if it shows through a little bit, but it shouldn't if you've crocheted it properly with the right weight of material. All I did was I simply put the fabric in, I filled it with pellets, and then I just basted it shut. And it doesn't matter if that's visible or how clean it is or anything. It just needs to make sure that the pellets won't fall out. And then we are ready to assemble the body. So I made mine stuffed pretty loosely. You can also pack it very tight and make it in a very structured one. So to slip knot onto your crochet hook, and then you want to start right at the very edge here so that it comes out to a point. And you do a single crochet in there, and then you just follow along. You're going through both widths of the body here, and you're just doing a single crochet that goes through both of them. So turning these two single crochets along the top into one. You can also sew this shut with a whip stitch or some other corresponding stitch, but I find that the single crochet makes it very strong and sturdy. So we're right near the end. You want to make sure you do one that's right on the edge here and then fasten off, and I'll show you why. It makes a nice point at the end of the owl here. And with this one, there's two loose ends here. I might actually tie them to make sure they come to a point themselves. There we go. And then to simply get rid of these, I go in from any spot really. Come up as close as I can. Probably go to the back here. You grab your threads. There. Then you can pull it a little bit too tight, cut your thread, and then when you expand it back out, now that thread is hidden inside. You can repeat that with this thread. Pull a little bit too tight, and then when you go like this to release it, you'll see. So there's our body. So now we will move on to the placement of the belly. Now, placement of the belly, we have these stitches here. You can see there's a little bit of an extra hole here where we did the single crochet two together a couple times. And we did, I think, 5 rows of that. So I would like the belly to go and start right at the bottom underneath those decreases that we did down the middle. They kind of make a little seam. I always like to make sure that there's no jut up here by pulling this through the next one, almost like you're doing a slip stitch there. And that just makes it more rounded instead of having a little bump. Okay, so we attach the belly at the bottom here, where we've decided so that it comes up to the edge of the single crochet two togethers here. And then what I do is I sort of go back and forth. So I'm at the bottom here, I'm going to go up through this single crochet here, and then holding it in the place that I want to, down through the next one. Hopefully you can see that okay. And then I find an appropriate spot on the body, and I simply go through there. And I like to go through the single crochets because then it makes a nice clean edge here where it might be even raised a little bit. And I think that from my experience is what works best. It holds it in place nice and tight. It doesn't change the look of the overall shape of the piece. So I will continue to do that all the way around. Again, I'm not poking through the actual fibers of the yarn. I'm poking through holes that exist based on the actual crocheting of the body. And I'm trying to do it so that you're not going to be pulling anything. It's just going to kind of sit where it's sitting. You're not trying to pull it so tight that it's stretching or changing the shape. You want the belly to stay in a nice circle. So here we get right up to the end. I'm basically back where I started. And then what you want to do at the end, I usually just loop around the body of one stitch. Oops. And I leave a little bit up like that, and then put your needle right through there. It just kind of secures it more tightly. Then I simply tuck under the stitch and kind of go through a couple single crochets, same as I would if I were hiding the loose thread in a regular one. Just go through a couple and then go through back again, leaving just in the second one of what you were going through. So going through those stitches helps secure the yarn in place. It's still invisible. And then you simply tuck your needle underneath. I'm going underneath the belly. And you can just pull it out some other place that's far away from where you were. And again, pull it a little bit tighter than it should be. You can see my little point. Snip it. And then when you straighten that back up, now that yarn end is tucked safely underneath the belly and won't come out. There's no way for it to escape really. And then you've got your belly on your beanbag. Okay, so next we're placing the eyes. The eyes are the most important part as far as making the owl look the way that you want it to look. So here's one of my eyes. I've got the eyelashes, got the center part, and then the outside color here. So the first thing that I always notice whenever I change colors in the round is that there's a little extra piece here. And you can see the photos of this on my blog as well, where the pattern is. What I like to do is I'll take a piece of white from the back and I'm just going to stitch it over top of this piece of pink here, and that will make sure that that appears to be white instead of pink. So we've got extra strands of white on the back. Go to the front, bring it up right beside that extra pink area and simply put it back down on the other side of that pink area. And then I attach my safety eye. So for people who don't know what a safety eye is, it looks like this. In my case, I'm using a 9mm safety eye. It's got the back piece that holds it securely on, and that way when little kids are playing with it, they can't pull the eyes off. So I'm pushing it through the center, the magic loop section of the eye, and then I put the backing on. You pinch it in nice and tight. So with the eye placement, we want to have the eyes centered on that center decrease seam that we were looking at with the belly. And we want the eyes to have the eyelashes up top, or a little bit to the side if that's what you want. But you want the eyes to touch in the middle and just touch the top of the belly. And then I'm going to start by securing it on the body, like so. And it's the same exact way I was doing the belly. And on this one, you just want to be a little more conscious to make sure that your start of your eyelash is staying in the right spot here. Okay, so we have secured the eye in place. Now we'll just continue going around the pink or outer eye single crochets. We'll go down under the lashes so that the lashes can kind of peek out of them so they're not sewn down. I think it looks better that way. And I've kept the inner eye white and pink threads just tucked underneath. Saves you the hassle of having to hide them or sew them in later, because they are invisible when they're tucked in behind the eye like this. So there, I've gone all the way around. I'm back to where I started. And then you just go underneath, and you're simply hiding the thread by going underneath as much as you want. You can even come out the back if you want. And pull that through. Tighten it a little more than you need to. And snip it as close to the edge as you can. And then when you pull it loose again, that thread will be in behind the eye and won't be able to get out. So there we have it. We've got one eye in there, ready to go, in place. The lashes are up like this. Now to hide these eyelash loose ends, that you should have one on each side, again, you thread your tapestry needle. What you want to do is you want to just go through the first single crochet there and back through another one just to give it a little bit of edge. And then from the back here, I'm just going to slip it down underneath a couple of strands, like that. And then I'm just simply going to poke it down through the eye so that the threads are behind the eye again. Pull it a little bit tight and then cut so that when you stretch it back out, it's stuck down in between behind the eye. So there we have it. We've got one complete eye, and then you can see the eyelashes kind of come up, which is nice. And then we will repeat the same structure with the second eye. Positioning of the beak, we are simply going to put the beak so that it basically touches the eye centers and then comes down into the first row, the first round of stitches on the belly. And I'm using whichever side is longer is fine, the other one will be hidden easily. Now with the beak, you're having points. So what you want to do is make sure that you're stretching out where you're attaching to the body at the points, just to make sure that it stays pointed and doesn't look too rounded off. You see how the bottom kind of looks rounded? We'll get to that. So I'm going to start over here. So I'm going to attach it to the body, right where the pink meets the white. And then I'm going to, this one is a little bit different. It still has a single crochets across the one side, but it'll be chains on the other side. And basically I want to manipulate it so that it's pretty much making a point up here and sticking pretty close. The rest I do just normal and working towards this point that should be lined up with the center of the eyes. And there we go. There he is with his beak, or she. Maybe she's a she because she's pink and purple, but you never know. All right, and next we are attaching the wings. So where we're going to position it is we're going to position it with the point down. You want the wings to sort of start close to where the bottom of the eye is. You want to definitely not be on the ear. So somewhere in around there looks good to me. And again, depending on how firm you stuff your beanbag or your stuffing, it might change the location a little bit. But from the side view, you want to center your wing and the point down here with the ear itself. And how we're going to attach it, we're actually only going to attach it through a semicircle around here. That will allow us to flip the wings up if we want to make the owl look happier, or keep them by the side. So we're going to use, this is the end of our round here, and we're going to sew around in a semicircle to about there, and then we're just going to hide it in amongst that top section and tie it off that way. So let me just thread this end needle, and again I usually find it's good to pull it through one time just so that there's less of a defined edge there. You don't want your wing to really touch your belly, but it can be pretty close depending on the thickness of how thick you've stuffed it. To me, this position right here looks good, so I'm going to hold it with that hand. And usually I sew counterclockwise. I don't know why, maybe it's because I'm left-handed. But this time, because my yarn is over here and I want to only do the top semicircle, I'm going to go clockwise. And it's the exact same technique. I would say with the very first stitch, make sure you're grabbing a part of the body that's directly under the wing and not out to the side. If it comes out to the side, you might see that yarn visibly. And that's not what we want. We don't want to visibly see it. And the most important part of this is just being consistent from one wing to the other so that they're placed on the same part of both sides. Now I'm probably just going to do one more and then secure it because, again, we're only going halfway around the circle. So I'm going to actually pull this last one kind of inside here. Pull it up so I can see what I'm doing. So that way you can still flip the wing up. And now I'm going to secure it. Easiest way is first to go around and then have your needle come through. Just give it a little bit of a knot there. And then you want to take it through the middle of a few stitches. Now this one, because it's not secured all the way, it's kind of a pocket under here. So you're actually going to be hiding this like you would on a flat garment. So again, you go one way, then you skip one loop, you come the other way, give it a few stitches at least, and then again pull and trim close to that stitch. When you straighten it out, that should disappear just tucked in behind, and it's disappeared underneath. You will always have these little joins here, which is where you've joined initially to the garment, but again, on this guy, you won't really see those, and you may choose to have the wings flat too. And all that's left to do is attach the feet and do the hair. So with the feet, they look like this. They've got what I call toes, because I'm sure really I should have called them claws, but they kind of look like a little barefoot or something to me. Again, I like to tug on the magic loop just to make sure that it's nice and tight in the bottom. And the feet, you want them to have, this is the right side, and that's the wrong side. You can tell because it curls up towards the right side. And we want to have the right side facing the belly itself, so that'll be face up. And when we secure these on, we're actually going to use the tail from the middle of the magic loop. Doesn't really matter which tail you use, but we want to do a line. We're going to sew just a straight line across here, attaching the foot to the underside here. So we're just going to sew one straight line. In my case, usually I use the middle, and I just go out and then back across. And that way the foot can sit flat on the table even while this rounds up. So just a straight line here and a straight line here for the foot beside it. I always like to hold them both up to make sure that they're going to fit together. The wings might be in the way a little bit, so we can curl those out. And positionally, you could use the center as guidance. It depends again on how much you stuff, how firm you stuff that belly. But you want to make sure that however you're having them sit, that they won't be, you don't want them up too far like that. And you don't want them to be way, way, way at the back. For me, I want them to be maybe around there. So if I sort of hold those and flip them up, it looks like I want to have the toes sort of coming over the belly here in the middle. And again, make sure you find the center of the bottom, which is here. That's where you started your body round. And just have them, make sure that the toes themselves center there. So this looks like the spot I kind of want to have them. I'm actually just going to use my sewing needle to kind of hold it there while I get it ready. And again, just like everything else, this one will be sewed, instead of going around an edge this time, we're going to go in a straight line. So I'm going to start from the middle because that's where this piece is joined. And I'm simply going to go out, make sure I grab a stitch of the body. And I stitch along this line. Oops, my yarn is a little bit shorter than I'd like. Again, I say in the pattern to leave the a very long tail when you're doing the magic loop for the feet. And this is why, because when you sew it on, you want to have it long enough that it's not too finicky to work with. But it should just take a couple stitches there. There we go. And then we want to come back and stitch it up again through the middle. I'm actually going to skip over to here. these last couple to bring it into the middle. I'm working with a lot less extra yarn than I would prefer, which is fine. I can manage it, but it's definitely easier to do when you don't have a short tail. Okay, and then we just want to hide these threads the same as we do on any flat work. So again, usually you go through, you can optionally do a little knot there, and you go through the middle of a few consecutive stitches, like this. And then you skip that first loop and then you go back through the other way for however many you want. I'm gonna grab just maybe one extra. Pull it through, pull it yarn tight, making sure it is secured there. It's pretty good. Pull a little extra tight and then you snip it. And when you straighten it up, I can pull this out because it doesn't need to hold it in. And then your foot is attached. Looks like a pretty good spot to me. All right, our feet are on. Our owl is almost done, except for the hair. If you want to do the hair, again, it's optional, it doesn't really matter. You can always put it on, see how it looks, take it off. I mean, all parts of this are optional, but you need to find the center here. I'm going to say maybe it's this one. And you just want to put your hook from back to front into the single crochet. Take your 3 strands as per the pattern, around, I don't know, 3 inches long, 2.5 inches long. Pull it through like that, and then you want to, this gets a little tricky, depending, you could use a bigger hook for it, it would make more sense. You want to pull all 6 strands through these 3 strands that you pulled through initially, like that. And then you want to pull them tight, making sure they're pulling evenly. And it's just going to simply make a little kind of slip knot thing there. And so you end up with 6 strands on top, which is great. I would not recommend leaving them this long because it can just get a little out of hand. I find when they're about 1 inch long is when they can sort of stay up on their own. So then you just simply trim them. I'm going to go about, say about there. Whoops. You want a nice clean cut, which I didn't really do. And then you can spread them out. And then your little guy is all done. So this is the beanbag owl. I would say overall the crocheting takes me about an hour, and the assembly, the sewing, everything probably takes me 20 minutes to put together. So maybe 1.5 hours total, roughly. And they're about 5 inches tall and 5 inches wide. So you can adjust based on the yarn you use. I would recommend using a hook that's a full millimeter size down from what's recommended for the yarn, just to make sure that it's not very holey. But you can always test it out just by doing some single crochet swatches and just check and see whether or not there's gaps that you can see. Because with this style, you don't really want to have any gaps. You just want it to look nice and clean and polished. And there you go.